Today is December 12th, 2020. The Tucson Astrologers Guild is proud to present a terrific panel of astrologers to talk about what's coming up in 2021. Susie Cox, Linea Van Horn, and Steve Weiss will share their perspectives and wisdom. Steve will show us through astrocartography, Susie and Linea by charts and discussion. And by the way, both Steve and Susie have new books out. You'll find their websites or how to contact them on that flyer on the Guild website. So be sure and go check that out, find out how to contact them, look at their websites, find out what new books they're offering. All right. Thank you so much for everybody being here. And with that, I'm going to remind everybody to mute yourself, especially including Frank. And okay, we're ready for Susie. Susie, take it away.
All right. Okay, let's go right over here to my chart. All right, let me move this over here. Okay, can everybody see my chart? Yep. Okay, great. All right, what I wanted to do today is start with some real astrology. And we've got some pretty exciting things that are happening astrologically. So I thought this would be a good place to start before I go into my PowerPoint presentation. And so this is where the planets are right now, basically, I guess a little bit earlier than this. What do we now? When I do this, I animate. I mean, I love animation, and here's all the animation over here. I've got this set on days, and you can set it for weeks, months, years, whatever. Days is a pretty good one. And I always do an Aries rising when I'm doing animation. Then I don't have to deal with the rising sign changing. And and of course I have equal house. So, just so everybody can kind of orient themselves to my style. And what are the main things happening right now? Well, we got this big Capricorn party that is just getting ready to leave. I've got my rising sign is 2929 Capricorn. So last night at 1 in the morning, Saturn went into my first house. That felt really good. And so these planets are finally little by little leaving Capricorn, and of course they've been dominating over the last couple years really. The other thing that is dominant is this big square to Neptune. And Neptune, yeah, the Sun and Mercury are up there, but basically it's the Neptune squaring the nodes. And Neptune's a slow planet. The nodes are moving slowly. And so that's been with us for a while and will be with us for a while. And I think that's fascinating because Neptune is healing. Of course, the other side of healing is the pandemic, right? And kind of confusion with the pandemic. Of course, Neptune is involved with fear too. So, and since it's squaring the nodes, look at 19 degrees, 18, 19, 19, pretty exact. The nodes are the collective on one way of looking at the moon's nodes, is the whole world really. So everybody is either, working on healing or being afraid, or COVID is just, on the news everywhere. So that is the big Neptune square. The other one that's been happening is Mars. We've had a long Mars retrograde in Aries, and finally Mars has moved direct. And so that's kind of the main things that are happening right now. Now I'm just going to go up and do a bit of a animation. I'm just going to do it day by day. Now we got a really cool thing coming up here. The other things that are happening is Jupiter and Saturn are conjuncting in the sky, and I've been watching it every single night. And they've gotten closer and closer and closer. And look at now, they're less than 1 degree apart from each other, right? And so they're going to be conjuncting, and of course the exact day they conjunct is 0 Aries or 0 Aquarius is on December 21st, which is the winter solstice. But what's coming up this week is pretty cool because this is the last month that we'll see Jupiter and Saturn, because the sun will be catching up with it. So they're going to be lost in the glow of the sun. But we can see the moon. So look at this. So when is this? This is the 15th. So the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th are when the moon is going to be conjuncting Jupiter and Saturn. And Jupiter and Saturn are really close to each other. You know, they can be northern Saturn, northern and southern latitude off the ecliptic. These guys are exactly the same. So it's going to be quite a conjunction. So for this next week, when it was this Wednesday and Thursday, those are the days to go out and absolutely take a look and see where the planets are. So the moon is going to be conjuncting Jupiter and Saturn at that time. And then I'm just going to be moving. Now, here we go. Here we have the 19th. Jupiter goes into Aquarius, but on the 21st exactly, and look at 0 degrees, 29 minutes. All right. So on December 21st, winter solstice is when Jupiter and Saturn are exactly conjunct. And that's auspicious. I mean, they could have, you know, Jupiter could have gone into Aquarius, or Saturn could have gone into Aquarius, and Jupiter would have caught up with it at like 5 degrees or something. No, they held hands and walked into the sign of Aquarius exactly at the same time. On the winter solstice, you know, you couldn't make this up. I mean, this is pretty amazing. So rituals, saying prayers, you know, intention, whatever you want to do on winter solstice, this is the year to have a little bit of a celebration or to focus on that. So that is a really good one. So let's just keep on moving up. This is, I love my animation. This is how I do my Astro Word of the Day every day. And this is how I do it. I leave it on Aries rising and I move around, you know, move it around and say, oh, what's happening? You know, what would be the word of the day for this, right? So here we go, January 1st. And what I'm going to do is really kind of go up to a real important day, which is the inauguration. Now, look what's happening over here. Mars is getting ready to move into Taurus. It's going to be getting ready to join, you know, they're gone into Taurus, getting ready to join Uranus. And let's just kind of move on up. Now you can notice this big square, the Neptune square, the nodes, is going to be here for a while. But the other square that's happening is this big hairy square between Uranus and Mars, squaring all these Aquarius planets. So let's go ahead on up. See, it's getting thicker. Ooh, okay, well, that's a big day. All right, that's just because the moon is there. Now let's just move it on up until January 20th. All right. So that this is the inauguration, and on the day of the inauguration. So this is, let's see, I could have, now let's be fancy here. So let's put it up to hours, move it up 1. Let's shift it over here to minutes. Let's go back to noon. That's right. It would be noon at Washington, D.C. So, all right, that's okay. But at any rate, this is basically what's happening on inauguration. So, and actually in Washington, D.C., you're in the moon was 29 degrees Aries. So Mars is exactly conjunct to the minute of Uranus, with the moon at the 29 degrees Aries on the inauguration. That's a little volatile. Now that easily could be all these planets in Aquarius is like, oh, we're starting something new. We do have a new president. So this could, on a positive way, positive level, look at, gee, you know, big changes in the world relating to looking at something new with all this Aquarius. On the challenge side, this could be volatile. You know, not everybody's going to be happy about this transition of power. So that's going to be quite the day. And this is really, let's shift over here to days. So this is really the reason that I did this this going on up here with the, and because it's so exciting and it's so interesting and it's so with the animation, that's why I wanted to animate it, because this is an unusual chart. So here we have one big square, you know, between these, you know, Uranus and Mars and the moon, squaring mostly the mostly the Aquarius planets. And then the other one is the big square from Neptune squaring the nodes. So, when you interpret this, was like sudden changes relating to new beginnings. And with the Neptune square, I mean, some people are going to feel healed with this. Other people are going to feel that it's fake and not real. And of course, Neptune has both of those. So, any rate, it's kind of an interesting astrology right now. So I had to take a look at this before I went into my PowerPoint, but I think that's probably enough. Everybody I'm sure knows how to do this. So let me stop share. Let me reshare, and let me go over here to my PowerPoint. Okay. Bring this up to new. Okay, let me move all of our pictures over here. Okay, planetary alignments. All right, so this is really what's happening. Okay, let's see, there's one more. Hang on just one second. There we go, at the very beginning. All right, preview of 2021, right? Okay, now planetary alignments. So what are the main alignments that are happening over this year? Jupiter square Uranus. So Jupiter is squaring Uranus. That's one of those big squares that I was looking at there on January 17th, right before the inauguration. So it's just kind of building up to that. Then now, what does Jupiter square Uranus mean? Expansion and change, or fanaticism and chaos. So Jupiter expands things, but it can also get a little crazy. Uranus likes to change things, but there's also a bit of chaos around that too. So that's the first one. Now it's only going to be one. Jupiter only squares Uranus on that day and then moves on by. Mars conjunct Uranus, we've already looked at this, on January 20th. Exactly. Action and new beginnings, or anger and revolution. I'm just using keywords here, guys. So action is Mars, anger is Mars too. New beginnings is Uranus, revolution is Uranus too. So, there are really only three major planetary alignments, and two of them happen right within the first few weeks of the new year. The big one that's going to be happening, that Linea is going to be talking about a lot more, is Saturn square Uranus. Happens 3 times, February 17th, June 14th, and December 24th, as it does a direct, retrograde, and direct. Saturn is the old, Uranus is the old versus the new, or resistance to the future. Saturn can be resistant. Uranus is the future. So this is ideally a compromise between the meeting of the minds between more conservatives and more liberals, and figuring out how they can kind of connect with each other and actually create something new. And that will happen. It'll take all year, it looks like, but that is going to be happening. So those are the planetary alignments that are coming up here. Mercury retrogrades. These are just kind of the overall picture of what's happening. I call it the stats of 2021. And here's the Mercury retrogrades. January 30th through February 21st is the first one. It's in Aquarius the whole time. Expect sudden changes. Be bold and creative. This is, and it's not really a Aquarius party like the Capricorn party, because the Capricorn, the planets were there for so long, you could really, really stay there. But when these planets go into Aquarius, Jupiter moves on past. So there's not like a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction holding on. They separate pretty fast. So I'm just so glad to be not writing about the Capricorn party anymore. But it's not really going to be Aquarius party. They just move too fast. So, but the Mercury will be combined with all the planets that are in Aquarius at that time. The second Mercury retrograde, May 29th through June 22nd, it's in Gemini. Some retrogrades are what I call hybrids. They'll start in Gemini, but they go back into Taurus. But this one is, all these three are just in their signs. And they're in air signs, which is kind of an interesting one. So here we have May, to June in Gemini. Clean out your workspace and paperwork, good time to kind of organize, any office things. And then the last one is in Libra. So here we have Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. So all of the retrogrades, Mercury retrogrades this year are in air signs. Air is coming in. I mean, we got into this Aquarius, everything's going to be going into air much more than Earth now. And okay, so this one's in Libra, focus on relationship patterns. Going in Libra, which kind of leads into the Venus retrograde. Now, last year we had this long, hairy Mars retrograde, and Venus retrograded too. This year it's only going to be a Venus retrograde, and it's way at the end of the year. So December 19th to January 29th, 2021. This one's in Capricorn. Time to review repeating themes and relationships, reorganize your music, rearrange your art, decorate, renovate your house during this time. And Mercury, Venus retrograde is perfect for switching around and making things more beautiful, and of course relationships too. I think it's interesting with the Mercury retrograde in Libra, it kind of goes right into this one, so that might be a theme happening there. Eclipses. We have 4 eclipses. Last year we had 6 eclipses. We had one at the very end of the beginning of the year, one at the very end. This is a more normal year, and so eclipses happen 6 months apart from each other. 2 weeks a separate, lunar eclipse. 2 weeks later a solar eclipse. 6 months later a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. So lunar eclipse May 26th, 5 degrees Sagittarius. This one's a total. And it's named, get this, super full blood moon eclipse. All right. Jupiter is, yeah, so it's a super moon, it's when it's close, the moon is a little bit closer, so it appears a little larger, and the blood, it's going to be a little bit of on a reddish side. Jupiter is square to both the sun and the moon. It's a T-square. So that's going to make it a little bit kind of extra energized. This will be visible in the western US. Solar eclipse, June 10th, 19 degrees Gemini. Annular, well, which means that there'll be a ring of light around the moon, which is kind of a stunning look, although totals are the best. Mercury is conjunct the eclipse. This is seen really, really low on the Earth. You can only see it in Arctic. Or higher in the Earth in Arctic, and there's another one that's in the Antarctic. Okay, then we have 6 months later, we've got the lunar eclipse, November 19th, 27 degrees Taurus. Partial eclipse with Mercury and Mars close to the sun in Scorpio. Emotional, seen in Europe, Asia, Western, Northern, and South America. We should be able to see some eclipses this year. Depending where you are. Solar eclipse, December 4th at 12 degrees Sagittarius. The last one is a total eclipse. Mercury is also close to it, so this will be more energizing. This is the one that can be seen in close to the Antarctica, way at the bottom part of the Earth. So those are the eclipses. And of course, you can see all of these again. I mean, you can watch these again, but these are kind of some nice stats for the year. When are the eclipses happening? And we have Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year starts January 18th, and it's the year of the metal ox. And the ox is patient, dependable, trustworthy, fair-minded, dutiful, is often positions of authority, refers to routine and staying with normal conventions. This promises to be a year of hard work, diligence, and focus. It's interesting with the way Chinese New Year, Chinese astrology works. They have the 12 animals, and they change the animal every year, but they stay with the element for 2 years in a row. And in Western astrology, of course, it's fire, earth, air, and water. So there are 4 elements. In Chinese astrology, there are 5 elements: metal, water, wood, earth, and fire. Metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. And so last year was the metal rat. Now, metal is kind of rigid and set in their ways, and a little bit stubborn. The rat can be likes to bicker and likes to argue, and there's wheeling and dealing happening with the rat. That definitely happened last year. This year, it's the metal ox. Now I'm an ox. I'm a earth ox, Gemini earth ox, right? Thank goodness for the Gemini, because the earth ox is, the ox is kind of like it's kind of like Capricorn in a way. It's almost like the workaholic of the Chinese zodiac. And so metal ox is got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do, getting things done, and doing it in a very determined kind of a way because of metal. And ox is just getting things accomplished. So overall, I think it's going to be a hard working year, but I think it's going to be a good year. So I'm actually excited about it. My prediction is that 2021 is going to be a much better year than 2020. I think that's kind of an easy one to predict. Okay, that's it, guys. That's my sharing. I didn't want to go on too long. We were supposed to have a half an hour, and I think that's probably good. Now, any questions? It was kind of just mostly stats and data. So, but any questions before I hand this over to Steve?
I think you meant that Venus retrograde would last until January of 2022. You had 21 in
Oh,
your,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. I needed
and,
you as my editor there. Sorry.
and the annular ring of that annular solar eclipse, that's a kind of the light is escaping around the ring of the sun. Yeah.
And I said the moon. I needed you
Yeah.
here, dear. Yeah. So
you need to always check with your editor. Yeah. Thank
yeah.
you, Susie.
You're welcome.
Let me see if there's anybody else has a question. No, I don't see any other questions for you at the moment. Maybe some will come in at the end, and we'll let you chime in along with the rest of our panel if there's any more questions. Elizabeth says, interesting that the Venus retrograde will be in 26 Cap, same degree as current Capricorn conjunctions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's an opportunity for a little bit more Capricorn. Huh? What would you say about that?
I'm going to be ready to be done with Capricorn. Yeah. So,
And
but there's probably a little bit more that people are, Pluto's still there. So there's probably a little bit more of Capricorn that people need to work on a bit. I'm looking forward to the Aquarius part, actually.
And I think she also, I think you covered the December 14th. You went from today on what's happening, that electoral college is happening on December 14th.
All right.
Okay, how's Saturn going into your first? Does it feel good, or?
It feels really good. This is my
worried?
Saturn. Yeah, this is my Saturn, on going into my first house, and I'm feeling really good. I mean, all you guys are here. I don't know, nothing. I mean, it's all pretty good. I'm not seeing any tough things happening. So I'm happy, actually. I think it's going to be better in the first than it was in the 12th, just thinking. So yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for reassuring us, Susie, that Saturn isn't all bad. It can be good.
It's doing fine with me. Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty well, actually.
I'd say thank you. That was a really great set the tone of what's coming up. Thanks, Susie. And now we'll hear from Stephen, and he'll bring us the astrocartography of what to expect, where to expect these aspects really playing out in the world. Okay, Stephen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
Let's see, Steve. You speaker. I'm trying to take it away, Gail. Can you still hear me? All right. This is not good.
We can hear you. You're just, it's great. See you and hear you.
All right. All righty. I'm going to share the screen. Kind of hung up here on, okay. Let's do this. Well, I hope you can see me. I'm having trouble seeing myself, but I'm going to get into this in a second. Thank you, Tucson, for having me back. My favorite group of astrologers. And this time the traffic was perfect.
Would you like, yeah, you're right, traffic, not a problem with the Zoom. Would you like to just briefly mention your book that you've just
Strangely
finished
enough,
writing?
my final slide is a slide of my book. I thought I could probably get away with that. So thank you, Gail. And I will
Great.
get to
Great.
that
Okay.
after I've earned that right with my remarks. Speaking as an
Okay.
Aquarian ox, I feel very validated by Susie already. So thank you, Susie. And unlike Susie, I feel like the remarks I'm about to make about astrocartography here in 2021, it should come with, my remarks should come with an advisory that sensitive viewers might be disturbed by what I have to say. Maybe it's the weather or my own psyche, but I have to be a little trepidatious about the coming year, and I'll show you via the maps why I say such a thing. So let me pull up my presentation. And with a little luck, you're now looking at my my title page. Is that true, Gail?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you very kindly. In dealing with yes, Susie and Linea today are painting with the big box of crayons. They've got all 52 or however many the big box has. I want to stick with some primary colors today because I think they're important enough to really need the emphasis of being focused on. Because as you are about to see, the areas of the world where all of this Uranus stuff, for example, is hitting is enough to raise anyone's eyebrows. So again, forgive me if I seem a little too harsh in my analysis, but this is what this is what spoke to me, and I hope that by speaking about some of these things, I'm diffusing them rather than encouraging them. And of course, as with any astrology, we're speaking about mythical representations of energy. We don't necessarily do so well with the outcomes. I've never been the sort of guy who has liked the aspect of astrology where astrologers sit around predicting doom. It's just, I think it's bad for the field and bad for our psyches. And yet I want to take this year very seriously. Now, here are some of the ground rules. The first slide that I have up are some of the ground rules in doing any astrocartography. Charts precede maps. This is something that people, when they get into astrocartography, forget all the time. It isn't enough to see a Venus line and then decide, well, that's a wonderful place. You know, I'll be happy there. I'll have my heart's desire if there's a Venus line. Well, if that Venus is afflicted, say by a square to Saturn, it may not be the place where you want to send a client. So that's hypothetical. You have to make the case, as Susie just did, about the charts before the maps make any sense. The second point, my second bullet point about map lines, there are three kind of major lines that you will see in the maps, and I will try to differentiate them to you as I talk about them. But celestial lines are the lines that most people are familiar with astrocartography, thanks to Jim Lewis back in the 1970s when he brought this field into prominence in the astrological community. We were dealing with celestial lines, and we still are. They're the most important lines in an astrocartography chart. They're talking about the passage of planets and other heavenly phenomena over the cardinal points. So when you see some of the charts that you're about to look at today, we're looking at where Sun is going to be on the ascendant, or where Saturn is going to be at the midheaven, or Uranus is going to be at the descendant. And most astrocartography is about the celestial lines. Also important, though, in doing an analysis of geopolitical events are the geodetic lines. Now the geodetic lines are the sort of thing that make the rest of the world their eyes cross about astrology when you try to explain the geodetic lines, because basically they are they calling them abstract as being kind. They're more or less imaginary. But thanks to a very eminent astrologer who was a theosophist, the right-hand man of Madame Blavatsky, an astrologer by the name of Walter Gorn Old, who is also known in astrological literature as Safariel. He just thought it would be interesting enough to start in England, make the longitude 0 degrees of Aries, and then go around the world. Just number the 360 longitudinal lines in a consecutive fashion from 0 Aries to 29 Pisces, and this is the heart of the geodetic zodiac. And what Old postulated, what he argued was that, for example, if a planet was in 0 degrees of Aries, then that planetary line would be over England. Uh, for example, a lot of the United States of America is in Sagittarius. So when planets are in Sagittarius, they're affecting the United States. And I will give you examples of this, of geodetic lines. They seem to work. Yeah, I wouldn't call attention if they didn't work, but they seem to work. Geodetic lines talk about Earth perspective, and by that I mean, if you have a celestial Venus on the IC, that's probably a nice place for you to live. That's the subject of the chart has a Venus on the IC, that's a good place for the subject of the chart to live. The geodetic lines talk about an Earth-centered phenomenology, so that a geodetic line says this is the characteristic of this place, independent of the subject. The geodetic lines, because we're only interested in what degree the planets are in, they're affecting the Earth from a perspective outside of the subject of the analysis. It's the Earth-centered analysis. All right, so if you see a geodetic Mars going through Tokyo, doesn't mean that the United States is affected by that geodetic Mars. It means that Tokyo is manifesting that energy. The third line is local space lines, and this is largely attributable to the azimuth work of Neil Mickelson, who I think was envious of feng shui. I always felt that astrologers got a bad rap by not having the status in the business world, for example, of feng shui. Everyone thinks feng shui is legitimate, but astrology, you still have to argue that it works. And the azimuth lines, the local space lines, show the directional flow of energy. And much like a feng shui analysis would do, you can see what energy Jupiter's coming from, what compass direction the various energy flows are of the planets. Before I get into this year's charts, this slide, and I hope it's large enough on your screens, I use the Sagittarius rising United States chart. All right, in 1776, I used the Sagittarius rising. I know that astrologers argue about the Gemini rising or the Sagittarius rising. Here's a good example of how astrocartography works. The map that you're looking at is the local space lines for the declaration, for the establishment of the United States government radiating. These are local space lines, feng shui lines, if you will, radiating from Philadelphia, where the United States came to birth. What's fabulous about this chart, and I hope you can look closely enough to see it, is this white line that's cutting through Maryland. There's a very tiny little square in the center of this chart. If you look really closely, you'll see that there's a very tiny square in the middle of this chart. That tiny square is Washington, D.C. And I will tell you, as someone who's into this subject, who's done a lot of research about presidents, for example, it's amazing how that incredibly tiny speck of the planet can show up in the charts of political leaders of the United States. It's beyond statistically believable. This chart of the United States of America, of the birth of the United States of America, the moon line, the local space moon line runs right through Washington, D.C. So I've always used this astrocartographically as an example of the Sagittarius rising chart is right, because in that chart, the moon bisects Washington, D.C. And that's just a cool fact. Now we'll get into why you asked me to appear today. The two charts that I am basing my work today off of are the chart I just mentioned, the United States birth chart in 1776. And while one can make all sorts of arguments about what chart to use in the year ahead, if one wants to pick a chart randomly, and I have found over the years that this chart works for me, I like to calculate my year ahead chart based on midnight for Washington, D.C. on January 1st. So when all of the fireworks are going off and all of the noisemakers and everyone's kissing each other and drinking champagne, I like that moment. That, to me, that moment represents the start of the year, and that's my natal chart for the year 2021. Before I get into a comparison of these two charts, the first thing that came to me when I looked at these two charts together was 2022. Because if you can see well enough, and I hope you can, if you come over to the chart on the lower left, the United States chart, let's not overlook the fact that Pluto is at 27 degrees of Capricorn. All right, let's get real basic in our astrology here. Let's not get abstract and do all sorts of mental gymnastics. The United States Pluto is at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And if someone wants the easiest, astrologically, if you want the easiest way to explain the season we are in and we have just been through, which is not quite over yet, of COVID, of the political craziness that our country is in right now, we've had Saturn going over that Pluto. That's what's been going on. We've had Saturn dancing over Pluto during this whole season of the flu and this whole season of this political conflict in our country. In 2022, the year after next, we have Pluto sitting on that degree all year, from February to November, going back and forth. So 2022, this is coming attractions for 2022. And as astrologers, I know, and I will repeat it again, we are dealing with energy. We are not dealing with outcomes. But we have Pluto in the second house of the United States chart, and Pluto will be all over that second house and all over that Pluto the entire year of 2022. And I will point that out. So astrocartographically, this is where some key Pluto lines are in the United States birth chart. All right, this is where that Pluto line plays out in the maps. So as you can see, we have Pluto on the descendant, opponents, partners, other people, other entities that are extremely important, that we form important relationships with. That Pluto is clearly going through China. It's not going exactly through Beijing, but it's certainly going through China. And if you look just to the right of Hong Kong in that map, you'll see a tiny island, that's Taiwan, and it is brushing Taiwan. So this is in the United States birth map. When Pluto gets activated, these are areas that become sensitive. And I'm pointing out some of these areas right now because they are thematically consistent with things I'm going to show you for this year. And if you look over Pluto on the midheaven, Pluto in the midheaven goes right through Baghdad. It goes through Saudi Arabia. It goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's Pluto on the midheaven. I know that I'm dealing with a sophisticated and knowledgeable group of astrologers, so I'm not going to over-describe Pluto for you. But in terms of looking at the maps, these are the areas that are going to be impacted in 2022. And once again, if sensitive viewers, feel free to tune out, but this is what's going on. This is geodetic Pluto in the United States chart on the day that the United States came to birth in 1776. Geodetic Pluto, the one that Walter Gornold imagined, was in a degree that put it right through the Pluto on the IC, right through Beijing, right through China. In other words, for those who are concerned that China, and there's been a lot of, clearly you're all the sort of people who pay attention to current events. I'm not going, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go on and on about China right now, but in terms of China being a significant energetic issue regarding astrology, it just gets even more intense from here. I'm going to show you even more maps, but just consider for a moment that in the birth chart of the United States of America, Pluto is all over China. All right, back to the birth chart of the country and the 2021 natal chart. If you're going to pick one planet that is significant in this chart, in the 2021 chart, and in its relationship to the natal chart, just as Susie suggested, Uranus is the winner of the 2021 sweepstakes for most important planet. That Uranus is so significant, and Susie just gave you some of the reasons based on transit. But I want to point out, if you look at the 2021 chart, Uranus is at 6 degrees of Taurus. So one of the things it's doing is it's T-squaring the moon and Athena. Now, you may or may not be big Athena fans. I happen to be a huge Athena fan because Athena represents an extraordinary kind of competence, to transcend thought and action and be successful. If you look at the United States chart on the left, you'll see that in the natal chart of the United States was created with Athena and Moon conjunct. And that's always said to me that the United States as an idea, as a philosophy, has always been able to come up with the miraculous solution, to the highest solution, just through a sensitive appreciation of what should be going on. The fact that it's in Aquarius is relevant. And I don't want to over-describe again the astrology of the situation, but just keep in mind that at the moment of formation, Moon and Athena were conjunct in the American chart. Now we are dealing in 2021, the 2021 chart, Moon and Athena are exactly opposite. So Moon, the ability to sensitively be aware of things, to take in things on that emotional feeling level, is separated from Athena, the ability to work out anything, to triumph over any obstacle or work out any plan. Uranus is T-square to Moon and Athena. But wait, there's more. Uranus is also in the United States chart. It's T-square to the nodes. All right, so not only is it T-square in the 2021 chart, it is T-square to the nodes. Not only that, Uranus is now becoming the dispositor for Jupiter and Saturn, as Susie suggested in her remarks. As Jupiter and Saturn go into Aquarius, they disposit to Uranus. And if you want me to cheer you up anymore, the last time Uranus was in the sign of Taurus was between the years of 1934 and 1942. I'll say that again. Uranus' last visit to Taurus was between 1934 and 1942. The Great Depression, World War II. And now Uranus is getting extraordinary pressure placed on it. I didn't know until Susie just informed us that Mars was conjunct Uranus on the day of the inauguration, which doesn't make me feel any more blithe about Uranus. Uranus is in the 8th house of my preferred 2021 chart. So we start to suggest issues. Better astrologers than me have tried to describe the 8th house easily. But we do know we are dealing with assets, the assets of our enemies, the assets of our allies. We know that there's a lingering sense of ultimate mystical issues, including death. You know, Uranus is nothing is sanguine in the eighth house. It's hard to brush off, but we get a kind of suggestion that that the nations and that we are allied with and that we are opposed to are are going to inject into the life of the United States the unexpected. Let's call it the unexpected. Susie used the word revolution, which I liked a lot too. But we're dealing with Uranian energy that is all over the United States chart. It's all over the chart for 2021. So where does that shake out in the world? Oh, China. The Uranus on the ascendant line in the 2021 chart goes exactly through Beijing and through Taiwan. So the first thing that we're going to notice about 2021, China represents to us the Uranus ascendant. So at best, we can expect the unexpected. But considering that Uranus is in the eighth house of the 2021 chart, this is intense. This is very intense, knowing how lit up the charts are by Uranus this coming year. The line of that the Uranus ascendant line would go through Beijing should be enough without me offering any other explanation. So wait, there's more. Go over to the left here for the line that's going vertically. That's Uranus on the IC, and it's going exactly through Moscow. I love astrocartography. I feel it's a very powerful form of astrology, but sometimes it's just, it's too much. It's too on target. So we have Uranus on the IC, and this is celestial. So this is in relationship to the United States. This is United States centric, these lines. So dealing with a Uranus on the ascendant from Beijing and a Uranus on the IC through Moscow. And so you can write, as astrologers, we all write the story based on the symbolism, but we do get a suggestion that something at the root of Russian society is being shaken. There's some sort of once again, I'll use Susie's word of revolution. There's a sense of something unstable that the Russian that Russia itself is sitting on a hypothetically or a metaphorically unstable situation that will affect us in the United States. Let's look at geodetic Uranus. Oh my God, what's the chance that the geodetic Uranus would also be going directly through IC, through Moscow, this time Uranus on the midheaven? So I ask you to consider as we observe the current events, as we observe what happens in the year ahead, you've got Uranus all over Moscow this year, all over Russia. And Uranus on the midheaven means a change in the relationship. This is watch the power structure of Russia very closely, because the indication is that there's change at the top, unexpected, revolutionary, very, very odd and Uranian type change on the midheaven in Moscow, independent of the US. All right, I have geodetic in the US 2021 chart, but basically we're looking at where Uranus is in the world right now, according to the geodetic lines, according to the geodetic understanding. And considering that we have Uranus on the IC celestially, we have Uranus on the MC geodetically through Moscow. Oh, that's heavy stuff. Watch this space for really, dramatic change in Russia. I keep wanting to call it the Soviet Union, which of course it's not anymore. It's Russia. If we look over to the right, we see Uranus on the descendant going through Japan, a little offshore. Not as direct a hit on China, still in Asia, and the suggestion is, what is the nature of what kind of alliances will Japan be able to form? In other words, we're looking on the descendant, so we're looking at Uranus on the descendant in Japan. We're looking at Japan forming unexpected, unusual alliances, and this may be America-centric. It just may be a sense of of, I don't know what it's a sense of. It points to very strongly to Japan forming unexpected alliances. Now, I mentioned that Athena, Pallas Athena, was very, very important to me because it's conjunct the moon in the United States birth chart. But it's also since the point is that Uranus is excuse me. I need to go back to the I don't want to go back to the charts. I'm going to stay here. The point is that in the 2021 chart, Athena, yeah, I got to make sure that I'm not missing this up. Excuse me. I'll come back. I want to go back. Yeah, go back. Last viewed. Last viewed. Okay, we're back. I wanted to point out that Athena, Pallas Athena, is at 7 degrees Aquarius in the 2021 chart. It's in the 5th house. Pallas Athena is at 7 degrees Aquarius. Of course, that puts it on the south node of the United States chart, so that Pallas Athena is being squared by Uranus. Uranus is squaring the nodes. Athena and the moon are very much involved in this incredible configuration of energy. Let me go here. So we have to pay attention to Pallas in this, to Athena in this chart, because it's very close to the moon in the American chart. Pallas is a very important asteroid in the American chart. And I wanted to show you here, as you can see again, the geodetic Pallas Athena is going through Moscow, and the Athena line is also going through Korea. Korea is another thing that's very much animated, very much indicated by the maps this year, Korea. But Moscow is hit once more, and this time by Athena. And Athenian energy says, I can do it by myself. No one can help me. I tell this to clients all the time. Athena is saying, I don't need any help. I can do this better than you can do it. I can do it faster. I just leave me alone. And the fact that Athena is going through Moscow is another level. It's another layer of what's going on with Moscow this year. The fact that Athena on the IC is going through Korea. Korea is hit by a number of lines, as I'd like to show you. Here is the geodetic moon and Pallas in the sky. This is the non-United States oriented. This is the global oriented. Athena and the moon are going through Korea. Now we know, because we're readers, we know that there's this issue about whether the North Korean premier whether his sister is going to take over, the rulership of North Korea. We have Athena going through South Korea and North Korea. Watch this space. Korea is going to be in a kind of turmoil, and it has a feminist component to it. Athena is a woman goddess, and the moon is certainly a female planet. Watch for this issue of whether the sister takes over this year, because it's indicated by the astrocartography that there's that kind of energy flowing into the Korean peninsula. Here's another place. It's funny because Gail had mentioned this to me just while we were chatting, before she knew anything about what I was going to do. And she said, well, some people are saying Brazil is an active place this year. And this is another spot in the world where Moon and Athena, Moon and Pallas Athena, are going to be very, very active in the year ahead. And that Athena on the IC is going right. Well, it's going through the Amazon. It's the moon on the midheaven that's going right through Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. I find that in doing astrocartographical work, that if a line goes through the capital of a political entity, that it affects the whole country. So moon on the midheaven going through Brasilia means that Brazil is in a highly exposed, sensitive state. The moon, as you well know as astrologers, is not ordinarily particularly happy on the midheaven, because the moon is a receptive planet. It's taking in things. It's sensitive. It does really well on the bottom of the chart. When the moon is on the top of the chart, there is a sensitive reaction to the events of the world. The sensitivity leads intelligence or thought or planning or strategy. So watch for some volatility, some political volatility, some strong feeling emanating from Brazil. I think I'm up to this point. I want to do this quickly enough so that I'm not taking any time from Linea. But the other thing that I noticed in the 2021 chart that struck me as important is that Neptune at 18 degrees of Pisces is square the nodes of the 2021 chart. And I think Susie did a good job of reminding us of that fact. But it leaves an imprint on the year. Neptune is part of the nodal consideration of the year ahead, and I have always enjoyed the use of the nodes as a kind of karmic indicator. The north node being Rahu, the dragon's head, that talks about the karmic purpose in this incarnation, and the south node, which I like to call the Shirley MacLaine degree, which talks about past karma and past incarnations. It's just that with Neptune being the skipped step, being square to both nodes this year, one of the things we can say about this year is, who knows? Because Neptune is not going to give you a straight answer about anything. Neptune is a planet of mystery and inspiration and deep possibility beyond the rational. And Neptune wants to be a player this year. Neptune, the unknown, the unexpected, the mystically impossible is being set up this year. And just to give you a quick look at Neptune, where Neptune lines are strong this year, Neptune by the way, Neptune is going right through Dublin. If you're interested in if you have an Irish heritage, Neptune is going right. Maybe we're just all going to drink Irish whiskey this year and pass into oblivion. On the lower left, you see Neptune. You see Neptune going through Mexico, going through Mexico City. And on the right, you see it going through India. And so, it's to not take too much time, to not go over my time, I just want to point out that India and Mexico are indicated as important countries in the United States relationship this year, but we're not sure what it is they are going to manifest. I point to India in particular. That line in India is Neptune on the descendant, and as a trading partner, as an important a quasi-ally on the world stage. We have to be careful, okay? If we were astrologers advising the new administration, we'd want to say, be careful of what India tells you. They may be fooling around underneath the table, underneath the deck. That is a very clear indication of Neptune on the descendant going through India. We can't see what it is they're offering. What's their game? What are they really trying to put across? What are we really getting, and what are we really giving? That would be a particularly large question for India this year. And on the left, the one on Mexico, I believe that's Mexico on the IC. God, I'm sorry, it's a little small. I think it's on the IC. And so we could possibly leverage this into a long story about immigration and all of the things that have been in the news for the past 4 years. At this point, so as to not monopolize the clock, just know that Neptune on the IC is going right through Mexico, and that we're not going to be sure what's going on there in terms of their own interior politics, in the arrangement of their own social fabric. And it will have an effect on the United States, because that Neptune line runs right through the center of the United States. The same one that goes through Mexico City is going through the heart of the United States. And you can see that in the middle of the United States, we have the Neptune IC line being crossed by the Neptune local space line in the middle of America. and so that's another area of sensitivity. Of Venus on the South Node in the US 2021 chart, more Moscow. I just want to finish up. Gail was kind enough to mention that I have a new book out, The 96 Incarnations, which is not about astrocartography. It's a cross-referencing of sun sign astrology with the lunation phases. If you're into the lunation phases, oh, this is a great book about lunation phases. And the thing that makes it great is it's a lot of fun. I have the quotes of over 1,000 celebrities showing how they illustrate their incarnation phase. And I enjoyed talking to you. I hope I haven't worn you out. And I'm sure Linea will get us back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was amazing. I mean, there are so many comments about, oh gosh, let me see, could you slow down there? I said, and I told them to, yeah, they'll have to be watching that again. Go ahead.
You've recorded it so they can watch it again, right? And maybe someday
Yes,
you'll be kind enough to have me back and we can do another session on astrocartography.
Yeah. That was quite amazing. Of course, the slides are a little hard for us to see exactly, what was it, IC, AC, AS, whatever the markings were. It was a little hard to see in the slides, but you were mentioning what those lines were, and very fascinating. Let me see, so there was a little confusion. You were talking about the US 2021 chart because you had January 1st, 2021 placed in Washington, D.C., right? Is that what you were using?
Yes. Yes.
So all
the first moment of the new year.
Yeah.
So my chart, the celestial.
Go ahead.
The celestial lines were all reflective of that chart. I feel just as a birth chart, in my analysis, and I know that there are arguments against using that chart, but for me, it's always worked. And the lines sort of validated for me that the chart for midnight on the New Year's Eve celebration on 2021, this coming year, that to me is the birth of that year in terms of American geopolitics. And that's what the lines were showing. And I'm certainly open to an argument that, oh no, that there are other ways, there are other charts, or there are better ways to do it. But that one works for me.
And those lines, therefore, because it's a chart set up for Washington, D.C., are showing how all those places in the world are in relationship to us here in the U.S. because of the location.
On the celestial lines, yes.
Okay.
Right. The geodetic lines, some places I was showing geodetic lines, those would be on the same degree for the most part. The larger ones like Pluto and Uranus, they're even later in the day. In other words, there would be New Year's Eve all over the world. But those lines, the geodetic lines would remain the same because they're only referencing the degree of the zodiac they're in, not their position in the sky.
Right. And those would be,
okay, because
those would be consistent for quite a while this year. I mean, that those outer planets don't move a lot, so they're going to be in that relative same geodetic space, right, for most of the year.
Yes, that's why 2022, the first time that Pluto hits Saturn is in February, and the last time it hits it is in November, and that's an example of what you're saying.
Saturn or Pluto?
Pluto. I'm talking about Pluto because yes. I mentioned that Pluto is a 27 Capricorn in the United States chart. Right. And that's a very good example of Pluto moving slowly. So that when Pluto is at 27 degrees of Capricorn, it's going to be there for a year, more or less. Right. It's going to be retrograding, but it's going to be going over that point for a year. That's why the Pluto lines are so important.
Right. And it's going to be its return, Pluto return in the US chart. And so 27 degrees.
No,
that's very important.
It's so easy because we know so many things, because there are so many astrological processes and procedures and things we know we forget, oh, Pluto conjunct Pluto, first time ever in American history since the founding. We can't overlook that. We just can't overlook it.
Right. So, okay, so everybody, you're invited to ask me for that link if I forget to send it to you, so you can watch Steve's presentation over and over again.
Right.
And we will have to invite you back. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm happy to send you the deck. If people want the deck, they can ask you for it. I'll send you the presentation so people can see it a little bit more clearly that way too.
Great. Great, great. So stick around. We'll have time for more questions after Linea's presentation, and we'll get to chat a little bit, all of us, after Linea does her presentation. So, okay, great, Steve. Thank you. Linea, are you ready? Are you on board? Linea?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm trying to
all
find
right, all right.
Yes, I'm here.
Take
Hang
it
on for a
away,
second. Oh, I had this
Linea.
problem before. I can't find my my PowerPoint here. Hang on for 1 second. I mean, I've got my PowerPoint. I just can't find it on this option here. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. So, can everybody see me? Hello, hello, hello. I can't see
Yes,
you because
you're
I'm
good.
like on totally full screen here, so I won't be able to see comments or anything like that. So, so first of all, I'd like to say thank you for TAG for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I really love TAG. It's one of my favorite groups to speak for, as I've said every time I come there. I say that. So thanks to the board always for all your excellent volunteer, unpaid hours of love and labor that you give to this group in order to make it a success. So thank you for that. Also, I want to thank Susie and Stephen for their excellent presentations that they just gave. I picked up pointers from both of them, and quite a few things I'll be not repeating, but sort of amplifying, I would say, and filling in some things. It was really gratifying to see Stephen's presentation that was not quite as American oriented or as US centric as I and others tend to be. So I actually really appreciated that presentation and pointing out other places in the world that we'll be looking at in the coming year. So, all right. You'll notice here that I've named my presentation 2020 Fun and put this in big quotation marks because I started it as kind of a joke, and I am finishing it as I'm not really sure if it's a joke or not. The fact is, we have this incredible year coming up that thankfully is not as intense as the year that we're just coming from, but certainly has its moments. Still, there are qualities in the year and events that are happening that I think will be somewhat easier to navigate than the period that we're just coming from. So let's take a look here. All right, so before we dive into 2021, I do want to take just a moment to describe the platform where we find ourselves today. I think it would be a short shrift if we really didn't take a couple of moments and just pause and review and take a little objective look at what we have all been through for the past year. So, of course, we all looked ahead at that Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction for many months or even years ahead. My God, there are entire conferences devoted to the implications of the Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which I have been calling, and pardon the French, the shit show for all my clients and students for this entire year. And I was not the only one who was concerned about the possible implications of the coming together of these three very heavy, slow planets and what we might expect. So I'm a big fan of Ray Merriman. He's a neighbor for you guys, lives up there in Phoenix. And he, for almost, I don't know, 40 years or something now, has written his forecasts for the next year. And I remember in the 2019 version, him talking about, it was a relatively a robust time economically in 2019, but that you could certainly see the cliff, that was coming, and indeed the cliff came, and we all dove over it, holding hands together without with the exception of that French astrologer who forecast the intense drop of 2020, most astrologers did not use the word pandemic when it came to describing what the universal, drastic life and death situations might be suggested by this conjunction. So this photograph is a relatively recent photograph of a doctor and a COVID patient who, from what I understand, was released several days later, and he kept wandering around looking for his wife, who could not visit him in the hospital. So that's the backstory of this picture. And so we've had, of course, not just the terrible disease and its terrible contagious properties. Everybody who's been ill has been impacted by it. Of course, all the many, now hundreds of thousands of people who have died, their entire family and social structures have been impacted. The terrible, terrible stress on our medical system. My God, the medical workers, the doctors and nurses, I don't know how, frankly, they have survived this year. In addition, this dealing with the qualities of the pandemic, of course, we've had terrible economic repercussions. Businesses have closed. Our entire ability to live our daily lives the way that we had become accustomed was impacted and affected. Many people lost their jobs or their entire professions or vocations. We have also the yet undetermined effects of this long-term social distancing on adults, on children, on schools, on old people, on, God only knows. We had the election in America that tested the very foundation of our democracy. And in fact, we still have a condition where it seems like about 74 million Americans do not believe in the validity of the outcome of our election, which was probably the most carefully organized and perpetrated election we have ever experienced in our country. Then we had also in the summertime, after this unforgivable death of George Floyd at the knee of a police officer who seemed, with his hands in his pocket, quite unconcerned about the effects of his action. Of course, this has been going on for hundreds of years here in America, but now video has made the rest of us unable to pretend that such conditions don't exist. So there was massive public protest in the summer regarding these conditions. Some of these protests escalated into violence. Actually, statistically, very, very few of those protests escalated into violence. And then there was some over response or overreaction from police departments. And in addition, we had extreme weather in 2020, and perhaps you were affected. I know Arizona, you had also effects of smoke, as we did here in California for weeks at a time over the summer. So, and these, of course, are just the news that was out there in the world. And then if you, like me and like many, many others, also in addition, had personal traumas or problems to contend with, well, it's just been a very brutal year. It just has been very brutal. And it's safe to assume that everybody that you come into contact with has been traumatized, including yourself. And so one little message that I do have is to remember that we have all been traumatized, and to treat each individual, including yourself, as though you have been traumatized, because that will lead to much more gentle and loving interactions, which are going to be one of the main balms or soothing activities that we have in order to recover. So I like this little image, which is basically a picture of a lot of us right now are just struggling to sustain life through the crack in the concrete here. So what I would like us to do at this point in time, before diving off into what's upcoming, is to truly take a moment, and we're going to take a moment here and each take 3 deep releasing breaths in order to bring ourselves just letting go of what we know has just happened. Releasing it. We can't solve it. We can't make things truly go away. But for this hour, we can put things aside and we can come to this meeting with a refreshed perspective. And now, with that fresh perspective, let's look ahead. Even before we get to 2021, though, we still have a couple of friggin' weeks left in December, and they are really some popping weeks astrologically. Of course, we have coming up here in just a few days this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that was mentioned both by Susie and by Steve. It's hard to overstate the importance of this particular Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Of course, these puppies come together every 20 years. So if you've been doing astrology for a while, you go, oh, another Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. But no, this one is incredibly special for a number of reasons. First of all, visually, if you're a person who, like me and like Susie, likes to go out and look at things, this thing has just been gobsmacking in the western sky after sundown. And what's awesome is that you can still go out and see it. It's still visible. The conjunction, which happens actually on the solstice, will actually still be visible. So I encourage all of you in the coming week or two to get your body outside after the sun goes down, look in the west, and you will see Jupiter and Saturn coming together. And they're getting closer and closer and closer, and actually will have the closest conjunction from our perspective here on Earth that they've had since, I don't know, 1235 or something like that. I actually have the dates written down in the notes. So when you get the PowerPoint, you can do a little more research there. So in addition to the powerfully visual aspect of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, of course, you've probably also heard that it is it's a great mutation conjunction, meaning that the element in which the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions are occurring is in the middle of shifting. We're just going between the earth element, where it's been for a couple of hundred years, and we're shifting now into the air element. It's been a little, we did an air and then back into earth, and now we're like full on into the air element for the next couple of hundred years. Now, what's fascinating about these is I have this little quote here by Benjamin Dykes, notes that the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions and their grouping by element or by triplicities is the backbone of historical astrology. Because, of course, historically, these were the two outermost visible planets. And so when they came together, they were considered the chronometers, the time makers of astrology. And just out of interest, I put this slide here on the left this is from 1941 from the New York Times. I was actually Googling Jupiter Saturn on the Times when the article I wanted was on someplace else, but the search brought up this little tidbit from 1941. There it was in the Times instructing people to go out and take a gander at Jupiter and Saturn. So I totally want you to do that this week. As Susie was saying, here's another great picture. This is from earthsky.org, a great little website for keeping track of what's going on in the sky. So we have the new moon coming up in a few days, and then by the 16th of December, only 4 days from now, you'll see it just below Jupiter and Saturn, and the day after just above. A really great lesson in how fast the moon moves in a day. So I would love for all of you to go out this week and enjoy this incredibly close Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Won't be this close again for hundreds of years, hasn't been this close for hundreds of years visually. So it's a really super special event that I want you physically, with your body and your own physical eyes, to go out and witness. Yay. I watched I don't want to get too bent out of shape or to spend too much time on this, but last weekend for OPA, Lee Lehman did an excellent presentation on this transmutation of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction from Earth to air. And she just commented that as a general principle, that when you are living in a period of time when there is the transition between elements of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, that this is a potent time to be alive. And of course, that describes the time that we're living in now. She comments that living through a transitional time is more stressful because we're living between two worlds, the earth world and the air world, and we're making that change. People don't know which set of rules to live by. So look what you get: division, digging in, nostalgia, people wanting the old, the olden order, pessimism, the sense that the old world is dying. And we certainly have these qualities in extremes today. This is Lee Lehman in her talk, says, doom and gloom increases until the new order takes hold, which is about to happen. Okay, when Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius, they complete their conjunction in just a 10 days time. We will now then be into the new air era. Air era, clever. All right. Oh, and this hilarious little cartoon that I found in the local paper yesterday, the Chronicle, Jupiter and Saturn are refusing to social distance. So I just put that in for some kicks and giggles. And see, this is when I wish we were in person because everybody would be laughing at this funny little cartoon now. Okay, also, before moving into January, I do want to mention this frigging Mars. Now, it moved into Aries June 27th, about halfway through the year. It won't move into Taurus until January 6th. So whenever Mars spends, 6 or 8 months in a sign, you absolutely know it's going to have a retrograde period in it. And this Mars retrograde period started on September 9th. You'll all remember it very well. It wasn't that long ago because it got right up to the end of Aries, where it was squaring the shit show, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, and caused all kinds of mayhem whilst there. It is now backed off, but starting today, Mars is at 20 degrees of Aries today, as we already saw. So in a couple more days, it's going to be exactly square to Pluto. And then dribbling over into January, it enters Taurus on the 6th of January. And then just a week later is going to square Saturn, conjoin Uranus, which Susie already talked about. That'll be exactly on the day of the inauguration, Holy Toledo. And then a couple of days later, Mars will square Jupiter. So, Mars in the old days, oh, look, we've gone a slide ahead. Mars in the old days was always pictured, with a bloody sword in one hand and a head in the other. So he traditionally, of course, has been the sort of the harbinger or trigger of problems, violence, heat, trouble. So I could expect, I would think, some trouble, Mars-related trouble here in January, the middle part of January. In regards to the pandemic, and people are saying, when will it be over? I do think that as the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto pulls away and Mars moves off this square, things are going to start to relax. So I thought, let's just take a look at that with the charts. So what we have here for the first of the month, 4 months in a row, from November of 2020 to February 2021, set in Tucson, why not, for noon on the first of the month. So here in November, we can see Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto still, very tucked up, quite close together. By December 1st, Jupiter and Saturn have superseded Pluto. They've gone past him already. There's 5 degrees between Saturn and Pluto. Down here in January 1st, now they're getting well ahead, 6 or 7 degrees ahead of Pluto, and then by February, let's see, here's Jupiter. Jupiter is 10 degrees of Aquarius, Saturn is 5. So they're already more than 10 degrees now separate Jupiter and Saturn from Pluto. And I do think that by February or March, we will start to see a decline in the intensity of the coronavirus epidemic. The remedies will be distributed. Panic will be less, and I think that by springtime, I'm hoping that will be more or less behind us. I hope, I pray. All right, 2020 fun, so to speak. Let's dive in. So I'm just going to kind of go quickly through these slides. So we're just going to put the planets where they are, the slower planets, where they are going to be progressing, and where they'll be in the zodiac for the year. So Pluto is only 24 to 26 degrees of Capricorn. Neptune down here in the middle degrees of Pisces. We'll be talking about that more in a moment here. Uranus has already been discovered or discussed as sort of the highlight of the year in terms of receiving activities and receiving transits that will probably be the most newsworthy. Saturn goes from 1 degrees to 13, so about the first half or so of Aquarius, and Jupiter will be going through the entire sign of Aquarius, only spends about a year in each sign, so that's not a surprise. And actually, Jupiter does dip in to Pisces in the middle months of the year before going back to Aquarius for the final months. And I wanted to talk about Aquarius for a while because Aquarius to me is one of those signs that a lot of students and people don't understand very well. Oh, I just got a funny noise there. I think we're all right. Um, so Aquarius is one of those signs that I think a lot of people don't understand very well. And I think one of the reasons for this is because, of course, traditionally, Aquarius was a Saturn ruled sign. The planet of Uranus did not become associated with Aquarius. In fact, for quite a long time after even it was discovered. It took some decades for those rulerships and assignments to settle down into place. And what has happened in the meantime then is that the sign of Aquarius has become infiltrated with many more Uranian type of qualities than it ever used to have. So I kind of wanted to go backwards a little bit and talk about and discuss how the more traditional astrologers saw Aquarius, and to have a more accurate feeling about what that sign actually is, because a lot of people seem to consider Aquarius to be, they call it a humanitarian sign. And I think that this is really not the best word to apply to Aquarius. So let's run through the ideas here. Okay, so first of all, when the sun is in Aquarius, it's in February. Okay, it is the freaking coldest time of the year when you've basically used up the stores that you had left over from last year, and you're pretty much skinny and starving and just waiting for new shoots to come up and little lambs to be born and stuff like that so you can eat again. So it's a very lean time of year. It's cold and lean. And of course, the quality of Aquarius itself, it's a fixed air sign. Okay, it can be quite cold and rigid. That's one of the qualities about it. I thought, oh, for fun, I would pick up Rob Hand. So I got Rob Hand out of my library and, just reread his take on Aquarius. And I like what he said. Aquarius is the sign of the individual as a cooperative unit of the group, or the socialized ego. So while it is an independent and freedom-loving and self-oriented sign, it's not the same as Leo, where the ego is enough all by itself. With Aquarius, you have to have an ego in relation to a group. Okay, this is an important piece of it. So Deb Holding, totally one of my top 3 favorite astrologers in the world, says, the spirit of Aquarius is to look beyond the immediate and the self-centered, to nurture the interests of the progress for collective society and humanity as a whole. So it tends to be a very fact-oriented sign. It likes science, it likes fact, it likes things that are empirical. It's not really so much a feeling sign. It's very idealistic, and in fact can slide over to be an ideologue, where the ideal becomes more important than the people or than the effect that the ideal has. To me, this is one of the scariest parts of the Aquarius paradigm, is the removal of truly personal concerns for the quote unquote common good, or the greater good. So, of course, that's their old yarn about Aquarius. They love humanity. It's people they can't stand. And I found that to be, I have a couple personal planets in Aquarius, so I'm familiar with the energy. And we sort of joke, those of us with Aquarius planets said, social distancing actually is not so bad for me. So, there are those of us who are not that unhappy with the social distancing thing. And as Rob Hand says, Aquarians have strong social ideas, but do not necessarily relate with others that well. It's a very detached sign. So moving on from this, because of course we have with now Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, this is going to be a stronger flavor than we have seen in quite some time of Aquarius. Okay, just for kicks and giggles, let's put in the nodes. So we have the North Node is going through Gemini now. It starts about in the middle. By the end of the year, it'll scoot back to 1 degree, since, of course, the nodes go backwards. And the South Node then will be in the opposite point in Sagittarius. Now, you'll notice, this image here is quite stark in pointing out that everything, all these slower planets that we have listed up here, are all on one side of the nodal axis. This is a thing. Okay, this is a thing. In Vedic astrology, in the Jyotish system, this is called a Kala Sarpa Yoga, and it's very serious. It's a serious yoga. and we have the conditions for it here. It requires that all the slower planets be on one side of the nodal axis, and then as the faster planets come through, you can get everything piled up on one half of the horoscope. So we have the conditions for that coming right up. In fact, in real life, we'll have them from January 10th until the end of March, when Mars moves forward in Gemini and pushes past the North Node. So this condition, when all the planets are on one half of the zodiac and hemmed in or contained by the nodal axis, this is called a Kala Sarpa Yoga in Jyotish. And as Camilla Sutton says, this is when the snake of time is wrapped all around you. Okay. Rahu and Ketu are karmic planets. This is Camilla Sutton. And unless they're controlled or managed, they are not easy. They're malefic when they're the masters of everything. They squeeze the other planets. So the feeling is that of blocking and of stopping and of dividing and of polarizing. So it's a very destabilizing structure in a horoscope. And when it happens in real life or in real time, as it is about to, it can create a lot of difficulty. And Camilla gave a couple of examples here in 2007 and 2008. This condition persisted when we had the big stock market crash. And then again in last year in 2020, from early March to about May. And I remember discussing this in a little astrology group that I'm in, how extreme and sort of karmically charged the events felt. Joni Patri, another great Vedic astrologer, calls it the karmic trap when we experience extremes of fate and destiny. Things happen that appear and feel fated. So if we're having it now from early March to about May 2020, I have here that the inauguration is under this influence. I have to think, I haven't seen the chart. I can't remember if everything is all piled up on one side. I think there may be some things out on the other side that might mitigate that effect for the inauguration, but certainly we will be experiencing it from March and April and May, except for those times when the moon is filling in that empty half of the chart. Okay, so let's talk about the big aspects of 2021. Thank goodness there's not 100 of them like there were last year. We basically have 3, and they've been previous speakers. We have Neptune square the lunar nodes, and I got a couple of slides on this because I got some ideas. We have Jupiter square Uranus, and just a one-pass situation in January, and then Saturn square Uranus, a 3-pass transit that persists the entire year. So these are all squares. You're going to notice square, square, square. And what is a square but a contest? It's a competition. Things are working at cross purposes when you have a square. That's the issue with them. And this picture is a funny picture where 2 elephants are trying to move a log, but one of them is pushing it one way and the other one is pushing it in a not even the opposite direction, just a different direction. And of course, they're not getting anywhere. They're not making any progress at all because they are working at cross purposes. All right, so Neptune square the nodes. This technically, this is a 1-pass, okay? And technically what's happening is Neptune is not squaring the nodes. The nodes are swinging by Neptune. That's actually what's happening. It's been persisting for quite a time now. It's exact on January 26th, and then it will persist until the nodes move well away, about 5 degrees or so, I would say, away from Neptune. So while, after Susie asked me to do this, and while I was thinking, and you know how it is, a couple of very interesting, similar, but different articles got my attention. All right. One of them was about a Republican senator who's about to retire, and he's been a Bigfoot, I don't want to say a fan, but interested in this whole concept of Bigfoot and the little group of people who are like all over Bigfoot, and there's a whole list of things. Bigfoot likes this, he doesn't like that. There's a whole list of qualities and things going on with Bigfoot that it's a thing, this Bigfoot thing. So this guy, a Republican senator, is like, checked it out. He said, there's some really dramatic similarities between the Bigfoot believers and some of my Republican cohorts right now, which I'll show you in a minute. So that article, and a day or two later, someone else forwarded me an article from Medium called Conspirituality. what it is and what do we do about it. So one of these is about the right wing not acceptance of truth. One of them is about the left wing not acceptance of truth, but it's really the same damn picture, isn't it? So, oh, I missed the Bigfoot slide here. So the congressman, here's what he noted, that the Bigfoot believers have plenty in common with political extremists on both the far right and the far left, lambasting a political system where facts don't matter. And that's the really key part here, is that facts don't matter. All of them ascribe to a team mythology that might or might not be true, and they stay on that team regardless. And that's what's so dangerous about politics today. That's what I've been trying to say. If you get the slide, this is all footnoted in the notes section of the PowerPoint, so you can do the research, you can look at the articles yourself and so forth. Then this article on conspirituality in Medium, a very, left-wing, high-minded, new age kind of place. This person, I forget his name is now buried now, I can't remember his name, wrote this article. He says it was disheartening to see how many of his spiritual leaders were falling for left-wing conspiracy theories, plandemic and other things like that. He said, and it was very troubling to him, and he was concerned that maybe people who are new age or more spiritually inclined have a tendency to believe in conspiracy thinking. And he actually listed traits that would correlate between the two: free thinking, a distrust of authority, a tendency to believe unusual beliefs or experiences, a tendency to detect hidden patterns or correspondences, and an attraction to alternative paradigms. So very interesting, because in astrologers, we're very free thinking. We may have some of these qualities ourselves. It's just always good to try the shoe on and just see if it fits. So, and then the most interesting thing about this, and this is the last slide here, is the idea that these conspiracy theories are actually a form of mystical or ecstatic experience. And that's why I'm putting it under this Neptune slide here. Come back. This Neptune is the planet I love to hate, as those of you who know me are well aware. So this conspiracy thing, not the conspiracy thing, but rather the religious or the spiritual overtone of the new age kind of thing is, I'm a unit, but I'm a part of a greater whole, and in this whole is love, and we're all cosmically united, and we're all one, and it's this sort of high-minded and like, woo, we're all one kind of thing. But the conspiracy thing is like, yeah, we're all one, and they're all trying to get me. Okay, so it's like the flip sides of the same damn experience. I was like, whoa, that was a real aha moment, for me. Two sides of the same coin. So last slide here, and then I'm going to move off this. And my whole point of doing this is because as a country, and even in the world, people are so divided and so dedicated to their own party, rather than to the country as a whole. So this seems to be a very dangerous condition in which to find oneself. And so I have my little warning sign down here. If you are a person who has more allegiance to your political party than you do to the country, that is a sign of a problem. That's a sign of a problem, because the right wing and the left wing are on the same bird. All right. So it has to be country above party. And if that is inverted, then we leave ourselves open for the kind of conditions and situations that we see ourselves in right now, where 73 million people seem to not accept the results of a fair and free and well-conducted election. Okay. Okay. Red line here. Check out this nice red line between the Aquarius and the Taurus. So, getting back here. So this points up the square that both Susie and Stephen talked about between the Aquarian and the Taurian energy here, and pointing out again how Uranus, the receiver of these squares, is a very major player in the coming year. So we have just one pass of the Jupiter square Saturn that will be in January. That cycle, because we're at the third quarter pass now, the 3/4 of the way through this particular cycle. It actually started in 2010 at 0 Aries. And actually Jupiter and Uranus is one of my favorite planetary combinations. I have the conjunction in my own horoscope, and I really like it because it's a very provocative and expansive sort of mind set, and innovative, and is historically connected with discoveries and breakthroughs and inventions and innovations and all sorts of forward-thinking progress. Georgia Stathis, I didn't put the cover of her book here, but I should have. I'm using her book, Pushing Through Time, which is a book a couple of years old, which is all about all the different slower synodic cycles. And she's done so much homework there that I thought I'm just going to utilize the work that she's done. So I appreciate Georgia. She's my dear friend and my colleague in regards to the work she's done for the next couple of bullet points here in the slide. So she calls Jupiter-Uranus cycle. She says it opens the door for innovation and elicits the aha experience. As I mentioned, it's very much historically affiliated with discoveries and inventions and breakthroughs. But of course, this is a square. Okay, so now we have disruptions or problems or challenges between or with or to new ideas and innovations. It's a competition between the greater good, as shown by Aquarius, and profits, money, as shown by Taurus. And as Georgia says about the last quarter, it's one of the most difficult sections of the cycle because we're nearing the end. The future is unclear, but there is an intuitive sense. It's just beginning to come up about how to proceed. So a lot of learning takes place at this phase. However, the ideas that come now, when they come to fruition, it's not going to be in the same form in which it was originally imagined. So that's what we have with our Jupiter square Uranus. Then by far, the most serious aspect of the year is the Saturn square Uranus. So let's dig into some details around it. The first pass is in February. That's at 7 degrees of Aquarius / Taurus. Then one June 14th. And I believe there was a note somewhere here. This June 14th, I'm pretty sure, is Trump's birthday. So he will have, for his solar return next year, an exact Saturn square Uranus in his solar return. And then the year ends on December 23rd with the final square exact pass at 11 degrees of Aquarius. And as was already mentioned by Steve, this aspect absolutely triggers the nodal horoscope in the USA chart, which is 6 Leo and 6 Aquarius. And that's true whether you use the Gemini or the Sagittarius rising chart. Pardon me. All right, so let's take this on a personal level first, because if you were a person who has planets or points between 7 and 13 degrees of any of the fixed signs, whether Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you will personally be impacted by this transit. So the good place to start in unpacking it is, number one, check the houses in your horoscope where the transiting planets are located, where the transits actually are being triggered directly. But then you definitely need to check the houses in your own horoscope that are ruled by Saturn and Uranus. So the house with Capricorn on the cusp or the house with Aquarius on the cusp are both going to be impacted by this particular square. And you want to be alert for Saturn-Uranus themes to manifest. Ooh, what themes might we be talking about? Boom. So when we're talking Saturn and Uranus, first of all, these are not comfortable bed partners, are they? They are not. Saturn is what's old and established and structured. Uranus is what's new and exciting and revolutionary and wants to crash through all of Saturn's stuff. So when you have the square and they're operating at cross purposes now, there's an extreme tension between what you feel are your duties, your obligations, and your responsibilities versus the need to frigging get out and have lunch with a friend, or, you know, go for a walk without a mask, or whatever it is that you would like to do that seems like impulsively free right now. So there's a tension between those two things. We have an extreme breakdown of the old patterns. The need for change is clear with this aspect. Breakthroughs can happen. They're just not very comfortable. Freedom is restricted or lost or inhibited in some way. The Saturn squares down on the Uranus. Establishment may oppress or try to oppress the new innovations that are coming up. Earthquake is a really common thing to have happen with Saturn Uranus. Oh, I just keep getting ahead of myself here. And in general, we have themes of old versus new, the past, which is Saturn, versus the future, which is Uranus, order versus chaos, pushing versus pulling. All right. And you can see that the combination of these qualities is going to produce feelings of frustration. Something's got to give. Something has to crack. It's a pressure cooker kind of feeling when there may be surges and then sudden releases of this intense energy. Something has to give. Something has to break. Georgia says, Saturn Uranus is often found to radically change the direction of market cycles and evolve new communication networks. The phase transitions between Saturn and Uranus can be problematic, and that's what we're having now. It's a phase transition. Saturn is structured, Uranus is chaotic. They are strange bedfellows. And when they are in an eighth harmonic aspects to each other, there's unpredictable behavior or market activity, often coming out of the blue when least expected. Now, I'm like not a financial expert or anything like that, but let's just be truthful that the market seems unhinged from political and real life reality. It's just crazy the way the market has been reacting lately. So it's going to be very interesting, I think, to see what happens next year with it. But the fact of the matter is that historically speaking, hard aspects between Saturn and Uranus have been terrible for the economy and terrible for business. These next quotes all come from Georgia Stathis in her book, and again, these are outlined in the notes of the PowerPoint. Who comments that earlier, a researcher used planets to study financial cycles. He examined major recessions and depressions and correlated the hard aspects between transiting Uranus and Saturn over a lengthy period of time. And this still holds true today. As Georgia points out in her book, the October 1987 conjunction of Saturn and Uranus. Now, it's interesting because I have twins who were born in August of 87. So when that market crash happened in October of 1987, even though I had like 8-week-old twins, I was aware of it. So that was a bad crash that happened in 1987 with a conjunction of Saturn and Uranus. And then in 2008, we had also Saturn opposing Uranus by transit when we had the big meltdown at that period of time. And that was a very serious meltdown. In my own family, I lost my job. My sister lost her job. Neither of us ever went back to work again after that. And that was true of many, many people of that crisis at the end of the aughts, as they say. So this Saturn square Uranus, the activity between them, I think, complicates the outlook for an economic recovery in 2021, which is what a lot of people, I think, are hoping for. I don't think it's going to be as terrible as it was in 2020, but I don't think it's going to recover as quickly as many people had hoped for in 2021. I think we're getting very close to the last slide here. By combining the restrictive energy of Saturn, the visible planet, and the erratic energy of Uranus, the invisible planet, trend lines instantly shift. Uranus is known for throwing things into a chaotic reorganization while Saturn holds steady. So this can create a catalytic shift when relating to each other in the eighth harmonic or a square as we're having now. And these are kind of my ideas of just a little, combining of keywords and key concepts for what things we might see. Just this is certainly not an exhaustive or a complete list, just some, entertaining some possibilities, some ideas. We have the idea of corporate restructuring or hostile takeover of corporations, pressure cracks. That's what, in fact, this image here, this is pressure cracks in ice. That was the whole point of this image. Ice with pressure cracks. You wonder if congressional or partisan politics will continue to block progress in our country. I would think that in regards to communications, something that Georgia mentions, that there could be some disruptions with EMFs or communication, cyber attacks, et cetera, that could be even more of an issue coming up in the next year than it has been. More coronavirus fallout on businesses, the breakup of social media monopolies. Now that I think is probably moving this right up higher on the list of priorities and likelihoods, especially considering the monopoly suits that are being filed against Facebook and so forth, although breaking it up is not going to be easy, but when is breaking up ever easy? So the breaking up the big social media monopolies, I think, might be a very number one thing that we see as a result of this aspect in this year. And then also the idea of increased regulation, Saturn, on the internet or social media industries. That would be a better demonstration, we would say, or use, we might say, of Saturn with Uranus. Okay, so we're at the end of that, and I don't want to just leave you dangling, okay, with Saturn, Uranus, and, crashes and so forth. And remember, the name of this talk is 2020 Fun. And so I wanted to spend the last moments here talking about the air element and how I believe that this is the key to making that transition from what has been such a horrible year in 2020 to making 2021 more manageable, easier to cope with, and even maybe a little bit fun. Okay, so we have quite a few things are happening in this element, which is why I'm bringing it up. First of all, we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction moving into the air mutation. This is a cycle that will last a couple of hundred years, so not something to sneeze at. Then we have the conjunction itself at 0 degrees of Aquarius, a very strong air degree, we would say. We have the North Node this year transiting through Gemini, and actually it's been in Gemini for about 6 months now. So this particular bullet point extends for longer than just this year. And then, as Susie already pointed out, and I wanted to talk about slightly more, all the Mercury retrogrades in 2021 will be in air signs. Okay. So Susie went over the dates, and so I'm not going to repeat it again, but we have in January and May, and then in September, all the Mercury retrogrades are all completely in air signs. Now, the interesting thing here is that, as Gary Caton explored in his book, Hermetica Triptycha, which is a book that's about 2 years old, I think it came out in 2018, this is normal. It is normal to have all 3 Mercury retrogrades inside one calendar year be related to one element. And when that happens, every year it's a different element. I believe they go in a foreseeable or predictable order. Mercury will spend more time in the signs of that one element than it will in all the rest of the signs combined. Okay, it's quite interesting. So what we have here is this emphasis on the air element. And so I pulled out a slide here from one of my, like an introductory class here, talking about the air element and just thinking about certain qualities that come with the air element that is so emphasized in this year. It's a mental and a cerebral quality. It's quick and versatile. It likes perception. It likes to be able to see orders of things. It is perceptive. It's interested. It's detached, and detachment is a really main quality of air that I think can help us overcome the heavy feelings that we have left over from 2020. So this idea of just going, well, what is the prayer for the AA thing? I pray to be able to recognize the things that I can change, accept what I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's a really good prayer sort of for all of us to have. Air signs are flexible, detached, curious. They listen and they like to communicate. They're not so judgmental. They're not so fixed to having their ideas be right. So there's an objectivity and an ability to listen and to consider and to think and to ponder about things that we've had in too little, I think, lately. So my ideas, my suggestions for making 2021 a year that's 2020 fun is to take nothing personally. Okay, people tend to take things personally that are not personal. So before you take it on as your own thing, really run it through some serious questions here. And if it isn't about you, if it isn't regards to you, then do not take things personally that are not personal. Breathe, keep an open mind, listen, talk, listen, which is the point of this little character here. She says, I got 2 feet, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 ears, but only 1 mouth. So we need more listening, less talking. Lighten up, laugh, and while we can't erase or minimize what's going on in the outside world with the news. And I certainly am not discouraging you from staying informed or being aware of what's going on. I definitely encourage you to do that within a sane reason. It's what we do with that news and what we do with our feelings regarding the external world that makes all the difference. And that's why I think we each individually, as individual persons, have the key that's required to turn 2021 into 2020 fun. So thank you very much for listening. I have one little slide left, a little promo slide, because that's what you do these days. You know, the whole talking world of astrology has just been disrupted and turned on its head with the removal forcibly of live events, which we all enjoy, coming together and meeting in person and shaking hands and sharing tea. But the future does seem to be moving definitely more towards Zoom meetings where we can have speakers and visitors from all over the world. And so that's very exciting. One of the events that got canceled in 2020 was that very exciting ESAR conference in Denver. Not canceled, postponed. So the latest is that that conference is planning to go live in September of 2021. I'll be speaking there. Susie will be speaking there. Lots and lots of really great speakers will be there. So if you know, we're moving ahead with the plan that this will be in person, and as I sort of move forward and visualize things, I think it will actually happen in person. So it would be great to see you there in person. And if not, we'll see you on Zoom. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Linea. Wow, that was great. I
Thank
just,
you.
you really pulled a lot of information together for us. And the fact that you say you're going to pass that PowerPoint along to us, great. So we'll have that one and Steve Weiss's PowerPoint to pass to those who want it, for along with the link to the hidden YouTube when Tom finishes editing and uploading this to YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of us that are going to want to go back and listen to this again. There's so much information. It was great, both the cautions and the challenges and the inspiration as to how to handle those challenges. Terrific. Terrific. I love that last bit, Linea. Lighten up, you know, breathe, lighten up, the serenity prayer. So do you know the September ESAR dates? Joyce wanted to know.
It's the end of August, actually.
Oh, is it the end of August? Okay,
yeah,
good.
I think the last
yeah,
weekend
that's
in
right.
August, 23rd or somewhere around there.
That's what you
Okay.
put. You said August in your slide.
Yeah, that makes more sense. It was September last year. The September thing got canceled, so this will be in August, right?
There was a couple of times I wanted to say something. Oh, you know, it's so hard to edit our own stuff, and I'm continually being reminded of that when I see what I put out. Much apologies still, Linea, for misspelling your name.
Don't worry.
Original flyer. So, you know, I think at one point maybe you said 2021 or 2020 instead. You know, we get the gist. They say something about, you know, those texts and those emails where you misspell a word, and yet our brain still processes the information correctly.
Yeah.
So let me see are there any questions for any of our presenters? Lots of appreciation, wonderful presentation, great information, great way to spend the Saturday afternoon. Okay, are there any questions? Does anybody have a question? You know, what you were saying about the nodes and how they're squeezing, you know, all these planets, these outer planets that are being in the bowl between the nodes. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And of course, they don't use a Pluto or Uranus or Neptune. They are only using the visible planets. But I think having the three invisible planets over there only makes it stronger. I mean, it's like really like stark. You know, it's a stark chart when you have everything piled up on one half of the horoscope like that. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question from Derek, maybe for Stephen. Any ideas about U.S.-China confrontations?
Sure. I, I suspect that the tension gets greater. I hate predicting things like that, mostly because I'm wrong most of the time. I recognize the energy flow. The energy is very intense. Uranus and Pluto are heavily involved with China, and in years in which Uranus and Pluto are major players, that that will always make China a a challenge for the United States. Can right thinking people work out differences? Of course they can. Are we in a moment where right thinking is going to be in the ascendance? I don't know. Linea did a great job of pointing out the problem of Saturn Uranus square and dealing with that transit. I think that with a new administration and everyone has to balance their position again. I think there'll be saber rattling. Does it come to anything? God, let's pray not. I hope not.
Yeah, I had noted, oh, I see it about 2 years ago or three, I don't know when, 2 years ago, we're looking at Trump's chart, astrocartography, astrocartography, and noticing his lines that connected with Korea and China. And well, we're about to see maybe perhaps he's leaving the center stage. I haven't looked at Biden's in connection with his astrocartography in relationship to.
That was the next thing I wanted to do, Gail, was look at Biden's astrocartography, and I haven't done it yet. But that is definitely the next point in the research, is to go see where his lines are in comparison to these other lines. It's a good thought.
We have a question. We have a question. What astrocartography software do you recommend?
I use Solar Fire because it's the astrocartography program that's done by Solar Fire is built into the program. So it's very easy to skip back and forth from charts to maps. It's now part of the program. So I wouldn't think of using anything else because I don't like to separate it out from my chart work. I like that the maps are part of the. I can just switch to the map mode and see it on the maps. See the chart on the maps.
Even the locality chart, of course. Yep, they're perhaps they're paying a little bit more for the program, Solar Fire program, astrocartography. They also have the locality chart, huh?
Yeah. You mean the local space charts? Yes.
The local space, yeah. I'm sorry.
Local locality is another name for it. No problem. Yes.
Yes. Also, Kepler software. I'm a real Solar Fire fan. I mean, it's absolutely my workhorse in terms of astrological programs. But Kepler software has I feel, a more attractive solar map function. I like the appearance of the maps on Kepler software much more than the maps on Solar Fire. The sort of underbelly of that is I don't think that Kepler as a software is as easy to use. It's not as intuitive or as user-friendly as Solar Fire is. It's merely on the visual. I prefer the the Kepler maps. They're just far more attractive than the really I don't know. Yeah, than the Solar Fire. And I'm a Solar Fire fan. Okay, that is I'm a big fan. It's absolutely my workhorse. But I do have that one criticism, I would say, of the program, that it's not beautiful. It's not attractive. But the ones in Kepler are. Yeah.
Either way, we've come a long way since Jim Lewis was doing
yes.
by hand and mailing them out.
Yes. Any other questions out there?
Are there any other questions? I see a few people that have come and gone or come back again. There's some people I don't recognize that weren't on my registration list. If you hadn't contacted me, like Jeff Morrison, I'm not sure who you are, but just heads up. I love it when you email me so I can put you on the registration list. So I know who you are. It's easier for when we're letting people letting people on the Zoom to know, have already gotten their names. Any more questions? I guess you guys did such a dynamite job of presentation that we're all sitting here kind of speechless going, I have to study this some more. I have to digest and think about this, and see where it's going to happen in my chart.
I kind of want to make a comment at that, how synchronized all of us were. I mean, I just kind of like looked at a chart because it's my MO. Let's just look at a real chart. And, it was a nice kind of a base to the whole day. And we, talked about this, Linea and I talked about this a little bit, but it was really nice to see how we synchronized with each other. I just want to compliment us, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but
oh, absolutely, it was beautiful. It just really turned out perfectly. Susie, you led off with such clarity, beautiful, simple, easy to really get the tone, get what's happening, and then followed up by Stephen and Linea. Great order. Man, I couldn't ask for more.
It was good.
Okay, so our, Susie just had another comment. How many more comments from Linea or Stephen?
Oops, I started it out.
Well,
Nothing
actually,
like putting you guys on the spot.
I really like Stephen's talk because it did focus on things that aren't America. In Americans, we were just terrible about acting like we're the only friggin' player on the stage. I mean, we're just awful. And so I really just appreciated that, and also that it was sort of like no surprises. It's like the same damn players every time. You got your Moscow. You got your Baghdad. Okay, you got your China. You got the same. It's just hilarious how it's the consistency of the pictures. So that was really fascinating. Really fascinating and pretty clear to me, except for you just can't see the tiny, minuscule, subparticle printing on the charts, but the charts are freaking clear. And I appreciate that you took out everything else that wasn't immediately related to what you were trying to say. That actually made the maps much, much easier to read, because those maps can be like really, eye twisting if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback, Linea, and it was both a pleasure and an honor to be with you and Susie today. So and thank you, Tag. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Really. I just had a comment. Now it's kind of it almost escaped. It was relative to the solar eclipse going near to Brazil. That's going to be happening in the southern hemisphere and very close to the line of the solar eclipse coming up. It's happening really near to Brazil. There was something about a solar flare also emphasized that part of the Atlantic Ocean between South America and Africa. That's interesting. There was something else. Lots of food for thought. Anybody else have anything that is coming to mind? Any questions?
I've got a question. How do people get the link to this once it's on YouTube? If people want that link and they haven't received it from me, please email me. That can be info@TucsonAstrologersGuild.net or GailTilson@gmail, and I'll make sure that they get that if they. But you're planning on emailing everybody that was here with the link? Is that?
Yeah, I'm going to try that. Are members and plus the presenters. You're all going to get a copy of this.
So otherwise, email you and you can get and they can get the link.
Yes, because I definitely need reminders. A lot of things fall through the cracks. I missed that one or missed that one.
No.
Get distracted, gosh, talk about, with Jupiter square Uranus and the Uranus squares and then Mars touching conjunct Uranus. There's opportunities for us all to be way over the top with distractions. We're focused on something and then something distracts us. This could be really dangerous at sometimes, or just, fupa, at others. But I think we all need to stay. This year could be coming up. Really is telling us that we need to pay attention. Always pay attention. Be here now. If we're not really present with where we are and what we're doing, and it's so easy to make a mistake that could be dangerous with Mars, Dr. Honest, or anything like that. I always, say, okay, pay attention when somebody has a strong Mars aspect to their personal planet, or something aspecting their Mars. It's when we tend to get in our heads and forget we're walking in bodies, and our bodies are moving, but we're in our heads, and then we're likely to stumble over that rock. So really stay in your bodies, Taurus-like. I love that. The Taurus was coming over the ascendant as Linea started her presentation, and there's a good solid Taurus energy there. And if I think there's anything that we want to remember is to, stay connected with our bodies. Don't let all this air take us into our heads so much that we forget that we're in bodies and we're walking and we're moving around, and a lack of attention could lead us into to making mistakes. If we're distracted when I could go on about a terrible distraction event that led to me flooding my kitchen the other day, but TV, those kind of things, distractions that then lead to consequences that we're not planning for. Any other comments? So, anyway, Donald Trump's solar return has that Saturn-Uranus square. How can we can't predict what he's going to do. You just can't predict anyone with Saturn with a Sun-Uranus conjunction. I mean, he can't predict what he's going to do. Do you all agree? Okay. I love you all. You've been terrific, all of you. The presenters, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Gail, for pulling this together every
Yep.
month, and Frank and Tom and Derek, and the Guild rocks. I mean, we've moved forward with Zoom and selling these books on eBay, and I mean, it's pretty cool. So I just want to compliment you in particular, Gail.
Thank you so much. Blessings.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Love you
Bye.
all. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.